Hi, Marlen.
Hi, Rebecca. Welcome. We are in another Google Hangout on Basic Income Guaranteed. And today we will be discussing the misinformation that goes around when people write articles, for example, about the projects that have been conducted around the world on basic income. And today we will be discussing one article that was published by Mr. Rigger Ostenkamp, and we will leave a link on it. And I decided that it is very important for us to discuss this, to go through the misinformation. And Rebecca was one of the people that actually went through this article and has one story to share. So, Rebecca, how did this go when reading this article, and what went on, essentially?
Well, when I read it, actually before I read Bernard's article, I just was really amazed at the comparisons made. I mean, you took extremes and you measured them against one another, and there was no validation in that. I mean, it doesn't answer any questions. It doesn't tell you anything about what was going on the ground and common sense and the physical, and instead it actually misinformed you and led you astray. And the outcome was, if you just followed the words and the information given, that basic income grant was not successful.
Okay, so to place some context for the viewer, this is an article that's based on the project that was based in Otivero in Namibia in 2008, that lasted for 2 years. And essentially the person that wrote the article is giving us a series of claims that have been proven to be wrong. But not only that, it says that basic income essentially has failed. So, Rebecca, what were your reactions when you read all this series of facts which were not true?
Well, it also brought in the income grant empower and motivate people to take up economic activity, and on top of that, they expected the big to result in a social infrastructure being made more use of, since schools and healthcare providers charge fees in Namibia. But in actuality, as Bernard said, the income was about $10 a month, American dollars, and that would buy some of the cornmeal that they would eat would about 10 days, or that meant eating corn porridge 3 days a week, 3 meals a day, and existing on that, and it didn't really provide for much more. And if they wanted, they have, where they are, it's so remote and there's no infrastructure there. There aren't any bathrooms. There's their housing is no clean water, so, and they need a iron pot to cook this cornmeal in, and that's not enough money to create a life that will allow a person to reach their full potential. I mean, nutritionally, 3 meals of corn porridge a day is not going to create a healthy person. So that's one of the points. And that's not even talking about transportation needed to move to and fro. I mean, it's ludicrous.
Yeah,
So,
essentially what happened is that this money was given apparently to support people to live, but it was genuinely only to get the food to get by. And that is a flawed starting point of a basic income, wherein you have an already like low standard living population in a certain little town in a third world country, and then you are trying to prove that it didn't work because all of these facts. But in essence, from the very beginning, the money was really not sufficient to live well, correct?
yes. And as the second paragraph goes into how this village, I mean, a village is a tiny thing. It's about 100 kilometers from the capital, Windhoek. I mean, they're very remote. So even to get some of the basic things needed to live in dignity, you have to really travel far. So $10 a month isn't even going to help with transportation, because I doubt any of them have cars. They don't have, so you give them this $10 a month, and then you don't actually sit down and say, well, what does this person actually need to live? I mean, obviously, even if you took into consideration transportation costs to get to the cities, to get the basic needs, and even just those two things, transportation and food, you would immediately see that $10 a month is, not really going to do very much.
Exactly. So which other aspect you saw within this article that because you wrote a response that wasn't really published, but the points that you reacted the most in terms
Marlen?
of what you read in that article? Yes?
Well, there's just two more things that I think of. Again, if you want to add another aspect, just creating your own shelter with $10 a month, that's, not even enough for transportation and decent food. You don't even have the means to even put something aside to eventually build your own structure, even with your own ingenuity in building your own structure. I mean, we're not even talking labor costs here. So that was another point. And the last one was he makes a comparison, or he says that what was given to this little tiny village showed no significant difference in the total movement of Namibia. I mean, that's like the analogy I came up this morning with is, say you have 20 acres and you plant fast-growing wheat on that. Everything's covered in fast-growing wheat. And in the middle of that little field, you plant, a slower-growing plant, that's not even as big, right in the middle. And then you stand back and you take a picture of this, 2 months, because these are usually short-term studies. And so the wheat's all up there blowing in the wind, and you can't even see that little tiny plant in the middle of that field. I mean, that's the kind of analogy made. I mean, what does that tell us? And then to just not even share the details in practical common sense of what is needed to live, to not show those, but then to present the statement that there's no significant difference in, this photograph we see of this country, of this $10 a month given. I mean, this really, as Bernard says in his article in his blog, this is really just to prove, how people can live with nothing. It's,
exactly.
The IMF,
and how little they get, and they get happy about it, because I mean, I would see that in South Africa it's almost like a similar situation. People would get happy when they get that bag of 10 kilos of that which they eat 3 times a day, and I couldn't really understand how they could just be fine with conforming with that amount of just that tiny support. But in essence, I mean, if you just take that one single population as an example of what basic income can be, obviously it will be flawed. Obviously it will make no difference, because the people was already living in extreme poverty. So the starting point of that single project was already flawed. And also another aspect is, as we were saying off air, how people use this small village and population. They do the entire project for 2 years, then they leave. And it's as if human beings were just like this rabbits or lab rats to test with.
Yeah, it's from the starting, they don't even look at existence. It's as though they're chasing an idea of an outcome that they've already had set up to justify before they even began. But one of the things that I didn't really, well, it's true. One thing Bernard says is that this man says that, we need economists to come in and look at all this, and we need this professional and that professional to come in and really see what's going on. And the point being that, these people that are in these institutions or are these entities that are these supposed professionals, they come in and they measure everything, and the money used to pay them to do all this is more, is more than the money used for the basic income grant. So this is something that's suggested, and I believe that these people are probably very capable. They're capable to be educated, even though their starting point is because they've been existing in lack for so long, is, as Bernard said, at the level of an elderly person who's had a heart attack. So right there, you have these villagers that already they're like the children in Romania that were stuck in their cribs their whole lives and never allowed to develop.
Exactly.
So on so many levels, there's been so much lack that is just completely unacceptable. And to go in and to abuse this lack in self-interest to justify that a basic income grant, it does not function, is really criminal. But at the same time, I think that many of these professionals are indoctrinated to follow this elite economics, and they themselves are lacking in common sense. So it is really for all of us to learn to look at the physical world in detail and to take into consideration what it really means on, to have clean water, clean air, shelter, education, so that we can learn to be self-sustainable and function, which we are capable of doing.
Yeah, precisely. And also when approaching information, when it comes to reading about virtually anything, and in this case, very particularly basic income, that you or anyone else can read this document and say, oh yeah, that thing, oh yeah, it's a failure. But wait a minute, what about the context? This is when the whole statistics and the whole economic procedures come really like a zero to the left, meaning it has no effect because there is no real understanding of what to begin with, what a living standard that would be beneficial for everyone would be like, and why didn't they begin with that starting point? Like, let's provide not only the basics to these people, but the best living condition that can upgrade their current living standard and not just kind of make them happy with the least. So how to approach information, what did you learn through having read this article, then the proposals that were published in the Basic Income blog by Bernard, and what did you come to realize?
I realized that if I follow knowledge and information, which I did, and I became emotional about it, and my response was that I was criticizing the means of using the extremes to hide what's really going on, and that was made really big, and I reacted to that, and then I went and I read Bernard's blog, and he really went into the details of existence, and I was like, duh. So I think a message to give to our so-called professionals, when you go in with your template, your elite economic template, what might be helpful is to use a template that really looks at the physical, really looks at what specifically are the basic needs that creates a person who is capable, who doesn't have a brain of that is the equivalent of a man, an elderly man who's had a heart attack. What kind of food do you need more than corn porridge 3 days a week, 3 meals a day, and what do you need, what kind of an income do you need that will give you a shelter, enable you without even labor costs, and what do you need to get to and from to get the food, and what can you grow yourself, and all of it, the climate and everything needs to be looked at. So walking in with a template based on elite economics, that serves IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and money flowing to a few, we really have to start looking at the physical world and not ignoring it. So I guess when I read the article, what I learned is to really be careful and not be emotional when looking at statistics that are presented.
Exactly.
To look at what's being compared in detail and what it means. And also, I think that this man expressed some of his own beliefs based on his own ignorance. My take. What?
And context as well. I mean,
exactly. I mean, my take on his article was that he couldn't believe that the health of these children was better. But it is amazing what will happen when you give a human being proper food and nutrition.
And not only like the minimum, right? Just to get by and make them happy. Because that's what we are aiming also with Basic Income Guaranteed. It is providing human rights that will enable that upscale in your living standard. Because if you only give the basic, it's obvious that you won't have the tools to, not even education or the necessary means to then kind of incorporate yourself to a going economy that can genuinely be best for all. That's why best for all is very important within our proposal.
Yeah, I'm sure that these people in these little villages with and they would probably need more than 2 years to develop themselves. I mean, to pull themselves literally out of suppression, out of lack. I mean, that's going to take some time. I mean, it's become a habit that many of us live in and accept. So I just thought of something else came up within that. So we actually really, I mean, IMF and our system is, the way I see it right now and after reading this article, is really a system of suppression. It suppresses life, so.
Yeah, that's precisely it. And also in terms of the sustainability, why it failed, it's because it was funded with some public funds, but also private funds. And also the moment that they decided, okay, that's it, 2 years later, there you go, September, and the whole money is gone. And not only were they playing with these people just as an experiment, but also not providing an economic model that can be sustainable. And that's precisely also it's one of the main foundations of Basic Income Guaranteed, a living income guaranteed system wherein the entire sustainability of basic income is precisely from the nationalization of resources, from the taxes that are not personal taxes but on the infrastructure, and things that can then just be the things that we usually use in order to live, and that money, instead of going into some rich man's pocket, it goes to be redistributed to everyone. And that's the foundation of basic income. It's like a circling system, just like the water that evaporates, condenses. That's what economy should be like. I mean, as you were saying, the elite economics don't have any form of common sense to look at this. It's amazing.
It's based on a pyramid structure, and just to simplify, a hierarchy is by its very nature something that divides into levels and then drives limited associations, because that's how the hierarchy is maintained. So a hierarchy is a system of inequality, and in order to sustain it, you have to create lack in the expression of life. And one thing the elite are obsessed with in their power is really their fear of loss, but they're just maintaining lack.
Exactly. So what we have to do, because it's very easy also to say, well, they are the ones maintaining it, but right now we are the majority. The elite is just 1%, we are the 99%. So it's about really to begin realizing this very basic common sense that you and I are discussing now, and realizing, well, they're not going to place the solution, we have to do it. That's why we are here with the proposal of basic income guaranteed.
And to stand up and do it, it really takes 51% of the number of people that vote, which is what, like 1/3. So it takes a little more than half of a third of people to stand up and to realize that we need to change this. And then it will create less fear on Earth, because you could go anywhere in the world and you wouldn't have to worry about being attacked, or it would create an Earth that is living in ease.
Exactly.
And
like the peace on Earth that we've been looking for by opposing war, that's not the way to go. It's about providing support to everyone, and then that peace will be created. Simple. Okay, Rebecca, would you like to add something to wrap this up? Something to share from your entire experience?
I suppose it's to really listen to what's presented, and to realize that we've been indoctrinated to only look at things in a limited way. And so in many ways, we're all existing as that elderly person in a state of heart attack because we haven't really learned to always use our common sense. We haven't learned to direct from our common sense. And it is the natural ability of us as life to be that. So it's there. And to just always stop and say, okay, what is being presented here? What analogies are being made? What are they asking me to look at? And to stand back and really say, okay, now what does this mean under my feet on the ground? So that's it.
Okay, we got a comment from Joanna and Joao. They say, very cool point, Rebecca. The contradiction of lack and fear of failure. Recently, I read an article where Philip Barrett, the son of one of the richest men in the world, questioned the role of philanthropy. My question, how can someone that is part of the economic elite, e.g. Philip Buffett, to support the basic income, meaning an elitist person supporting the basic income?
Well, from what I understand about the proposals now is that if we give people a basic income, we get the economy as it is flowing again, because people have money to buy their needs. And it just, you still, even if you took the resources that sustained us, like the electricity and stuff, you would still allow the capitalism model to exist, and if anything, it would strengthen them, because people will then have money to spend. So,
exactly.
But that's one point. But for this philanthropist to come and think of something to help people,
there's got to be something to him.
Joint destiny.
I mean, yeah, that's what we're essentially proposing. You mentioned very important aspects. First, the education to understand that everyone has to win. We cannot just say, oh, yeah, let's redistribute wealth and there will be people that will lose. No, it will be about understanding the aspect of sharing and how that will inevitably also benefit you.
Well, for a wealthy person, someone that has excessive wealth or a lot more wealth, even for them to be able to walk anywhere on this planet and know that all the peoples, even one's indigenous peoples or people living in the different cultures, it's nice to know that you can walk down the street and not have to worry or have a bodyguard, and with what's around the corner. And if people have their basic needs met, I mean, it's well known that even in America, an average salary of $60,000 a year keeps a person pretty content because their basic needs are met. So it benefits the elite to allow, to give people on Earth a living wage that will allow them to have their basic needs met. And so it benefits all of us.
Exactly. Okay, there's another one from Adele. It says, it seems that these experts and professionals see poor people as a problem instead of seeing our whole world system as a problem. And as I said, we are the 99% and we need to see this. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Adele. In essence, it is absolutely true. If we see that our professionals are not doing their job properly, like all our economists and all the statistics that they present without any actual physical relationship to how people are living, for example, we need to start realizing that whatever we read and everything that we have institutionalized and created as how things are because an academic person is saying so, we cannot trust that information, and we rather investigate for ourselves. And that's why us as a group, for example, Bernard was able to write about it because he was born in Namibia, so he knows precisely how money works, he knows how people live there, and that is the kind of investigation that will enable you to place everything into perspective and not take just things as they are written. So we
And it
are
is,
people that require to be empowered with information that can be seen through common sense, obviously.
yeah, and it's not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, because there are some things in the system that are good. So just to take what is good and to use it, and also there's no time to blame anyone, even the professionals in the system, because this has been going on for a long time, for generations, and so it's just for them to realize, okay, wait a minute, what have I been taught, and how do I take what's good from this and listen to, for example, what the Destonians are saying and create a system that actually looks at the physical world in common sense. So that's another point.
Precisely. Self-education, as we always say, implies that development of common sense. And it is nothing that you've learned at school. It is not your regular Harvard University titles or careers. No, not at all. This is something else, like learning how to see the world with a new pair of eyes, essentially. Well, if there's nothing to add on, thanks a lot, Rebecca, for joining us. A very cool
Thank
discussion.
you. Thank you for asking me, pushing me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, guys, so see you next Sunday at the same time. Thanks and bye.
Bye-bye.